A few years back, a major American retail store decided to stop dealing with a supplier from Asia because it cheated as to the origin of the textiles it was supplying. It said that it was providing pure Egyptian cotton towels, and it turns out that it wasn't. That issue, or the issue, is that to this day, pure Egyptian cotton is a major competitive edge. So what's keeping it from achieving its world-class standing and becoming a major source of foreign currency for this country? Like many other products, the land that used to be cultivated for the best cotton the world can buy has been destroyed for the sake of shanty towns or for the sake of construction, whether legal or illegal. A number of political, social, and economic factors contributed to this end. Issues that are not the topic of this discussion, but suffice it to say that the area of land cultivated with this strategic crop has dropped significantly starting from the second half of the last century. Will this continue to be the case? From the news we gather and we hear, it seems that resources that give us a competitive edge are receiving lifelines, and this is the case in the textile industry. Good evening. You're watching the Business Insider and here on Nile TV International, and I'm Ayman Salah. What we aim to do in this program is to bring you the inside story on the events making headlines and the major news developments. We'll be back. Welcome back. We start with news items, the newsworthy items for this week, and the first one goes 65% of companies listed on the Egyptian Stock Exchange complied with instructions from the Financial Regulatory Authority, known as the FRA, to include at least one woman on their board of directors by the end of 2020. Mohammed Farid, the chairman of the stock exchange, described this figure as an improvement from 2019, when only 48% of listed companies included women on their boards of directors. The FRA is seeking to have women make up 25% of company boards of directors. And the second and final news item is that Egypt's inflation accelerated to 4.5% in February. That's up from 4.3% in January, according to the official statistics agency known as CAPMAS on Wednesday. The annual urban consumer price increase comes after the headline indicator had fallen for 2 consecutive months. It fell in January from 5.4% in December and 5.7% in November 2020. According to CAPMAS, the year-on-year rise could be attributed to an increase in the costs of education, electricity and cooking gas and tobacco products and other goods. The central bank set an inflation target of 5 to 9% in December and kept its key interest rates on hold at its last monetary policy meeting. You're watching the Business Insider, the textile industry and its revival, coming up next. We'll be back. Welcome back. You're watching the Business Insider. Tonight I'm joined by an economic expert, an author, and a former advisor to the Minister of Investment, Dr. Ibrahim Mostafa. A pleasure to have you.
My pleasure too.
To have you with us on the show here
tonight. Thank you. My pleasure too, to be with you in this program, actually.
The topic of reviving the textile industry has been a topic that has been on the table for decades now.
Yep.
It's something that we're going to discuss tonight on the show, but first, let's watch this report and then we start our discussion.
Okay. Right.
textile industry has been awarded focused attention in the past years due to its potential contribution to the country's economy, as well as its capacity to create job opportunities. In 2020, a number of textile factories are due to be inaugurated following their restructure or upgrade. The world's largest spinning factory is to open in Al-Mahalla Al-Kubra within a plan that the government has embarked on to develop spinning and weaving companies alongside cotton ginning companies at a cost hovering around the 20 billion Egyptian pound mark. The plan includes a total modernization of construction and machinery along with a comprehensive upgrade of management, marketing and training systems. It also entails mergers so as to create strong entities capable of competing and integrating while tripling current production capacity in the spinning, weaving, dyeing and processing field, as well as to create solid trade and ginning entities. The plan also involves reviving cotton cultivation by increasing exports of finished products rather than exporting raw cotton. This falls in line with the new policy of creating value and benefiting from it. Promoting the textile sector does not only revolve around developing public sector companies, but also through attracting the private sector in the developments as well as foreign investments to the sector. Yet concerns present themselves, of which is the reliance on Egyptian cotton in factories after the development. Long staple Egyptian cotton used to produce ready-made garments will be difficult to market as they will be expensive due to high production cost, and global demand for high-quality goods might face shortage. Currently, exports of public spinning and weaving companies stand at 12% of total exports, so to grasp a bigger market share, producers need to leverage competitive advantages in terms of price and quality. That means both public enterprise companies as well as private sector ones need to devise a winning formula.
Welcome back. Reviving the textile industry is our topic tonight. I'm joined by Dr. Ibrahim Mostafa, an economic expert, an author, and a former advisor to the Minister of Investment. A pleasure to have you with us on the show here tonight.
Yeah. You've got a very important topic that has been, on the agenda for many years, actually.
Is it worth reviving?
Well, I just want to get back to 2001. There was a conference about awakening the sleeping giant. They called this sector the sleeping giant. Okay. Why? Let's talk about, some indicators about the sector.
Please.
It represents 30% of the total industrial production in Egypt.
30%?
Yeah, 30%. It also represents 10 to 11% of the total exports. It employs more than 1 million people. We have many factories working in this sector. Under the public sector. Umbrella. We'll get back to this area. Because this area have been. This area has been. Under the spot for many years, reforming, restructuring. You've heard many things about this area. Another thing I want to go back. My thesis. My master. It was about this sector. I was digging deep in this sector in that time. I met many investors working, local investors and foreign investors working in Egypt to investigate this sector, why this sector is not booming in Egypt. I discovered many things. It's like the private sector, let's say even the balance between the private sector and the government sector at that time. The public sector was controlling this sector for many years with no investment injection in this sector, no replacement of the machinery, no development, no restructuring, no capacity building for the employees. So this sector has been neglected for many years, starting from the privatization era till we reached 2004. So it was a very big time, having 15 years neglecting this sector. In the public sector. That led to this, making the sector not booming very well.
It decayed, basically.
Yeah, more than a decade, actually.
Right.
Lately, we have, heard many news about this sector, that there will be a big city, in Egypt will be inaugurated. I mean, targeting 6,000 factories. I mean, with total investment 9 billion investments, FDI, which is very important, but it will take time. Putting this sector under the SWOT is very important. Why? I mean, because, as I said, it's a very important thing that represents a very good percentage in the economy.
You said 30% of GDP?
I mean, 30% of the industrial production in Egypt.
Of the industrial production in Egypt?
Which is
1 million working in this sector?
Yeah, it's represent 10 to 11% of the total exports, of the Egyptian exports, which is very important.
10 to 11%.
Yeah, but this, I mean, even that we have this, I mean, a percentage of the total GDP of Egypt. If we compare this, I mean, the figure of the exports in this sector to other competitive countries, it's nonsense, actually.
Negligible.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh, you would see these countries targeting more than 15 billion exports a year.
$15 billion.
Yeah, I will get back to in 2010. Vietnam targeted to get, I mean, in 2010, to get 15 billion from textile exports. They had targets, but they exceeded the target. They got 18 billion in 1 year. 18 billion. Yeah, this is, I mean, very important to think about. Yes, if you have a dream, put the dream, and go back to the reality and draw your dream to achieve the target.
All right. We'll get into the competitors, if you will, and their success stories and their achievements. But let me ask you, first of all, an assessment of the sector based on the economic reality, the effects of the pandemic on this sector.
Yes, I mean, not only this sector has been affected by the COVID-19, all the sectors have been, I mean, affected. This sector, I mean, the textile industry, I mean, let's talk about the retail and the demand, because it's very important when you talk to look at the demand and the retail side, because this will move the production cycle.
Right.
You will see that we have, let's see the figures, 11% decrease in the retail sector, which, I mean, pushed many retail, I mean, brands like Walmart and other like these brands closed many stores of these under their umbrellas. Why? Because the demand
has all of a sudden
severely decreased, which means that sales are getting decreased. All these things, I mean, will affect, I mean, the revenues of these brands. So they will start thinking about how to fix the problem they are facing.
So if it decreases, basically the imports that they used to import will decrease, therefore the factories will not be producing, and so on.
Yes, just look at this triangle. You have, I mean, the trade, production, investment. When you have trade, I mean, increasing, then you start thinking about to produce.
Production increases.
To produce, you mean to expand or to build new factories. You need to invest. This cycle is very important. When the trade is affected by several factors, like what happened in the world economy. I mean, the trade war between China and the US, then the pandemic, then many factors that happened in the global economy that affected all sectors. The trade has been affected by getting down, investment getting down, so the production is getting down. So there's something is happening globally, is affecting everything locally and regionally.
But they say in every crisis lies an opportunity.
Yeah.
So at a time of crisis, you have time to set your house in order, to invest more in upgrading, which has been announced.
I'll give you an example about this sector, what happened in this sector. We know that our main markets are the US market and the European market, EU. I mean, because they were locked down, we lost these markets. But the Arab countries, our exports to the Arab countries, increased. So this is what you call that when you have a crisis here, you have another chance to use in other areas.
Sorry, right.
Yeah. When the EU and the US markets were closed, China started to recover, started to get the chances and to use the chances that they got during this pandemic. Yeah, so they are moving very well than other countries currently. So they are recovering. So this is the time how you shift your,
strategy.
your policy. You fix your policy. You started to get adapted to the challenge that you have. How to deal with these challenges. How to overcome. To put your strategy. You put your strategy for at least 5 years. When you have such challenges, you have to think differently. So what happened in the trade around the world? The traditional trade is getting decreased, but the e-commerce is getting high now.
It's rising, yeah.
So the opportunities in this, in the e side, what I call anything e-commerce, e-payment, all these stuff is currently are flying now. So this is when you said that crisis sometimes creates other opportunities to use.
Right.
Yeah.
So the sector, in your opinion, is reformable?
Currently, actually, mainly they have challenges because, after the Brexit, the European markets now have been suffering because of the Brexit, and they have now actually after the pandemic, the lockdown.
No, what I mean is internally.
Yeah,
here in Egypt. Is the sector reformable? Because now the concentration...
Yeah, everything is reformable. But if you need to put a strategy first. You should know where you are going. If I want to go to that area, I have to draw my path to that area. This is very important. I should know my capabilities, know my tools that I want to use, the budget that I have. All these, factors are very important to consider when you have something to reform. Well, remember that when we had a financial and economic crisis in Egypt after 2011, what happened? We suffered from the shortage in the revenues. We started to think how do we rebalance again the economy. It was very important. We used international institutions to help us, and we used sources of finance from different entities. But we applied a very aggressive reform policies, our program, to make it happen. So everything has a cost.
So what should be done in this
sector? Yes.
In this sector, because the main focus is on the public expenditure and the public sector reform.
I want to give you an example about this sector in other countries to see how you should benefit from other experiences. First of all, the interest rate, the subsidies. If you look at in several countries, you will find that the interest rate is ranging between 4 to 7%. While here you had, it reached 20%. Then now it's around 10%. Yep. In addition to the admin fees, so we're still not competitive in the interest rate. This is very important because any investment needs
both private
equity and debt. Yes. When you have an equity, it's around from 20% to 30%. You get the other money from the banks. If the interest is very high, the cost of the finance will be very high. This should be, I would like to thank the central bank because they reduced the interest rate from 20% to reaching 10%, which is very important, and giving the initiative that of the SME to get, the 5% to 7%. All these initiatives are very important during the pandemic that happened in Egypt or around the world. Yeah, we got some policies, but still this sector needs, to think about how we should put a strategy for this sector first. We should have targets. If we make this sector booming and achieving the targets that you want, because you are getting your, your dollars revenues from the export side.
I heard that for every £1 of subsidies, you get $1 return. Is that correct?
I don't know just the accurate figures, but sometimes exceeding this amount actually. Depending, you should calculate. In each subsectors how you make it.
So incentivize, simplify procedures and licensing, decrease the cost of
the land
finance.
allocation. The land is very important. The industrial land is very important because it's now many investors are complaining that the prices of the land is very high. Which the price of the land is very high, which is represents
because land.
The land should not exceed 15% of the.
But it's dealt with as a commodity here.
Still, we still have a problem in this area. Yeah, allocating. The land, the process of allocating the land, without having any problem with the land. The other thing, pricing the land. These issues should be solved. In addition to that, you should think about how to make, to interlink the subsectors to each other. I mean, having the term clusters, if you know the clusters, having this supply
Clusters
chain.
of certain industries and
Yeah, I
supply
mean,
chain.
you start to think about having textile city, which is very important. But when you think about this thing, you should think about how to locate other industries that are spreading around Egypt, whether in Shobra and here and there and there. And you should think about relocate these industries, having them in certain areas. South Korea started, I mean, with special economic zones. You don't have, I mean, industries and business outside, the industrial factories, I mean, outside these areas. So we started to think about, again, moving again to the industrial zones. This is very important. I mean, we still have the problem of utilities inside these industrial zones. Many factories are facing, I mean, the problems of utilities, I mean, electricity and gas, water, all these stuff. We still have shortage in providing investors, I mean, with all these utilities, especially to having this on the top of the land. In addition to the prices of these utilities. You should think it's a kind of equation that you think about, the inputs and the outputs. It's very important here.
So basically what you're saying is you need to have a holistic approach to revive.
Look from the upper, I mean the above here, seeing the whole picture first, then start to get down step by step, reaching, I mean, every tiny thing that to solve. But when you have a target, you start thinking about solving all these things.
All right, so when you talk about the textile sector, basically you start from, if you want to do it organically, then you start from agriculture. You start with the cultivation of cotton. If you want to deal with it in terms of added value, gas, modified petrochemicals, and so on, this is another story. So, but when we talk about the Egyptian cotton, my first question was, is the sector worth revival? Because Egyptian cotton in the old days was Egyptian cotton. Up till today, when you say Egyptian cotton,
it's a brand worldwide.
It's very valuable. Yeah. But the cost of producing Egyptian cotton is high.
Why? Because the spinning and weaving sector, I mean, the subsectors are capital intensive. So when you have good machinery to use the Egyptian cotton that is long and extra long, we don't have this. We don't have these machineries that are very expensive.
But they're being
now we started to think about this, to getting the latest and the most modernized machinery to use this, I mean, this edge in the Egyptian cotton, because when we travel everywhere, I mean, in the European market, whether in the US market, you will see that produce with the Egyptian cotton branding, that 100% Egyptian cotton.
And they're very expensive.
So why not having this in Egypt?
Right.
Why? Because the cost of production is very high. We should rethink about, I mean, the cost of production. We should have it as a breakdown. Where is the bottleneck? We should solve this area and solve this item. How to make it, I mean, very competitive. It's very important. Like what I said before, I mean, we started this interview, we were talking about the China approach. They have, I mean, the approach, this triangle: cost, time, and quality. At least you have to keep two corners, but you can't
neglect two.
Yes, you can just neglect, I mean, the time delivery sometimes. Take care of the quality and the price. But sometimes markets needs low quality, but you need it very, very quick. I mean, like the developed countries, China, that they have the mass production to several areas. They have all scenarios. They have, I mean, the low quality and the high quality. They know how to deal with the markets. They know what the market needs. They know what the European market needs. They know how to deal with the standards. All this stuff is very important to any investor. When you want to export to any market, you should know what are the needs in this market. Then what are the standards that you should apply to penetrate this market. These are very important.
Supply chain is a major issue.
Yeah.
Now they're dealing with enhancing the quality of the machinery, and they're starting with the spinning and weaving. So basically what you used to import is going to be ready at home rather than wait for it to come from abroad, and the textiles and so on and so forth. With this capital expenditure in the infrastructure, in the machinery, would this help us enhance our competitive edge?
It's not easy like what you say.
I'm trying to simplify.
To be very competitive, you should look at many factors. As I said, the cost of production. I mean, the markets that you have, I mean, the trade agreements that you have. You should think about the pros and cons. The cost of production is very high. You should think about this. You should give incentives there to make this product is very competitive locally, regionally, and internationally.
And not to rely only on the public sector.
No. Just I mean, you should think. You should rely on the private sector, or moving the mindset of the private sector to the government sector, to the public sector. Sometimes you bring new management for the public sector, with the private sector mindset. You change the culture inside This is happening now in some sectors in the public sector, and they are doing very well. So using the old way is not. It's not worthy to use the same way, the old way of applying the same thinking of the public sector.
But is the private sector keen on investing in?
They don't have money actually. You should think about how to have this kind of mix. They have assets. They should have to maximize their assets, to make money from these assets, to make. I mean, the modernization, the development, all these stuff. They have many assets they don't use. Why not to utilize these assets, having this money, and being injected to modernize themselves, having the new standards, having, I mean, the private sector mindset, all these things.
Some countries, Asian countries, used to take a portion of their apparel production or their textile or towels and so on and so forth, a portion of it Egyptian cotton, minimal, and then they would export the product, deliver it as pure Egyptian cotton.
Yeah, this is happening.
This is still happening?
Yeah, this is still happening. Even your Egyptian cotton is being exported to several countries, China, Europe, and mainly, I mean, the Asian countries. They are using your cotton and they are re-exporting this produce with high-quality produce to the European and American markets.
It happened a few years ago that a major American retail store stopped dealing with a manufacturer from Asia because they said this was pure Egyptian cotton, and actually it was like 10 or 12% Egyptian cotton.
This is kind of deceiving. When you deceive your clients, they will block you in the market. I mean, having this kind of transparency and disclosure, even and having deals with other clients, is very important. Egypt, we
have to safeguard our reputation here.
Before 2011, we had factories in Egypt were producing for certain retails. Well branded outside, like Macy's, Gap, and these brands. I know many factories were having this contract.
You're still doing it.
Yeah,
you're still producing.
But the market now, I mean, worldwide is not doing well. That's why, I mean, they are suffering. I want to give you an example for Tunisia and Morocco. What happened before 2010? They were competing Egypt. How they were competing Egypt at that time? They used, they are very close to the European markets. They start to think about why we don't have an edge in the textiles industry. They start to think about why to having kind of contracting, having contracts to produce for the European market, having their textiles with their criteria and their standards, and we produce upon these standards and criteria using their fabrics and raw materials. They made very well. They did very well actually in that time. So we should think about how to play it very well. We have different challenges which we should use to make this sector, boom, because we have the edge. We have the edge. It will take time, but you should think very, very carefully and very right how to make your targets done on the ground.
How do you regain your production in land that has been built upon? How do you increase the amount of land that you cultivate cotton, the high quality, long staple cotton?
Just look. We should not only focus on the extra and long cotton. Now they started to plant, the short ones.
But the short ones, you have China, you have other countries that...
you have factories here in Egypt using this area, using these products. I didn't mean that to stop this side or this side. As I told you, you have to think about what is the right mix. You should think about the right mix. It's very important. If we are targeting high quality products, we should have this area that is producing this high quality product. And what are the markets that need these kind of products?
Instead of competing with other countries that have very low cost and really control their cost mechanism, shouldn't you be focusing on your competitive edge, even if it means producing high quality, high cost product to maintain your reputation?
Again, for the cost of production, if you looked at the Asian countries, the Asian workers, they are getting very low salaries, but high productivity. Egypt is has a competitive edge in the salaries, but in the productivity, they don't have an edge. So this needs to work on the productivity. On the
quality and
itself,
productivity.
Yeah, the workers in Egypt are not committed. Actually, let's say are not committed. Most of them, they want.
You need to upgrade and train, basically,
and to well compensate. If you have the well compensated, a good atmosphere with capacity building and all this stuff. When the tuk-tuk and mobile shops spread over Egypt, and before 10 years. All the workers left the factories and went to these sectors to work in. The turnover in workers is very high in Egypt. The vocational school should be modernized and redeveloped and link them to the market itself, with the market needs. I started to see many factories started to build their schools, and having 30 or 50, 35% of the graduates of these schools to put them in the factories. This is very important. This is
vocational training.
The vocational training. When I went to North Carolina, I saw a very good experience there. That the private sector is playing a very good role in North Carolina, and they are providing the labs with the new technologies, and they share with the government their experience in putting the syllabuses and then all these stuff to make the graduates of these
employable.
Yes, employable. They go to the factories, plug in and work. This is the concept that we should focus on. Modernizing our vocational schools and developing these schools to make them employable, put the right criteria, put the right labs, and let the private sector get involved in developing this sector.
Will we have a competitive edge by producing fabric from petrochemicals, or should we maintain our traditional cultivation of cotton?
I think we don't have an edge in the synthetic products. The artificial products from petrochemicals, like the synthetic fibers and petrochemical fibers coming from this area, because India and China are playing a very, very well in this sector. Actually, we don't have an edge in this area.
Dr. Ibrahim Mostafa, economic expert, author, and former advisor to the Minister of Investment. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program tonight. See you again, same time next week. I'm Ayman Salah. Good night.